Hello and welcome to this little feature that I've put together to give you a little peek behind the curtain into the process of the Great Hoon Run edit. The Great Hoon Run is a really special episode of Retry because what we basically had to do was speedrun Bloodborne for one episode, and what we ended up with was way more footage and really way more bosses than would go into a normal episode of Retry. When we first played Bloodborne back at IGN, it took us 20 episodes to finish it. For the Great Hoon Run, we essentially did that in one episode. So I've got 3 days to edit multiple camera feeds, multiple gameplay feeds into what is essentially a Retry feature film. It is day one of the Great Hoon Run edit. I'm on my way into the studio right now to start. I'm quite nervous, but also really excited. We've got quite a lot of footage to get through. It's a very different thing. You know, we've got the process of editing Retry down. We've been doing that for a while now, but we're kind of chucking all that out the window. We're also gonna go for multiple gameplay feeds, so I'm gonna be able to switch between Daniel's and Powers' gameplay, which we've never had before on Retry. So I'm interested to see how that changes up the edit. I think it's going to be absolutely fine. I think it's going to be a good laugh, but I think it's also going to be an absolute beast to get through. But I feel like when we come out the other end, it's going to be totally worth it. Okay, the first step is setting up the project and start bringing in the footage, right? Now, since the Great Ornstein and Smaug footage loss of 2015, we've got backup captures for all of our video stuff. So usually we've got camera 1 and its backup camera 2. Then we'll have the gameplay capture 1 and its backup gameplay capture 2. So if one fails, we use the other one. Absolutely fine. When the Rona happened, we decided we wanted to start filming socially distanced because that's what we had to do. So then we added another camera in, one for Rory, then one for Daniel and me. But we wanted that to look like it's in one shot. Like, we knew it was no way it was ever gonna feel like we were all still together, and you do kind of lose something, but we needed to get on with things. So to be able to do that, I had to come up with a completely new way for us to work, right? I don't want to use the word workflow because I'm not cool enough, but that's what it is. Now, the thing that people really like about this new shot is that it really looks like we're sitting on the same table. So I really, for all of my edits, went to great lengths to make sure that all the table was lined up, to the point where a mate of mine even texted me saying, "I can't believe you're not socially distant. What the f are you doing?" I had to reassure him that we were filming socially distant. We're just very good editors. Once that is all set, I then set up a thing called a multi-camera sequence, right? Which enables me to be able to jump between feeds at a click of a button. So that means I can quickly switch between the shot of all three of us to punch-ins of our faces just by selecting one of these. So what I've done now is basically made Premiere think that the multicam sequence is just one feed, and I can sync that up with our gameplay. Now, there's no scientific way of doing this. It's literally Powers go in,
hitting start on the Bloodborne menu in 3, 2, 1, hit.
And then it's a case of me finding that bit in the gameplay where he does that and checking all the sound is in sync. So usually we'd be ready to go now. We've got our cameras, we've got our gameplay, we've got them synced up, but the Great Hoon Run had an extra element in the fact that we had Daniel's gameplay to work with as well. So Daniel's gameplay had to be synced up with Rory's gameplay, which also had to be synced up with our cameras. And I wanted to be able to switch between the gameplay feeds really quickly. So to be able to do that, I had to set up another multicam sequence for the gameplay. Are you still with me? Hopefully you are. That is as complicated as it's gonna get, right? Now remember the aforementioned great footage loss of 2015? After that, we basically made it a rule that we would never film for more than 60 minutes at a time, right? So if something did go wrong, well, it's only gone wrong for 60 minutes. Usually we stick to this rule pretty well, so you're only ever dealing with 60-minute captures. But with the Great Hoon Run, there was obviously a lot of faffing going on with getting Daniel in and all that stuff. So that rule went right out the window for some reason. So for the Great Hoon Run, what that meant was raw footage that we were dealing with, 2 captures of 1 hour 20 each, and then one beast of a capture session, which was 1 hour 40. So that's altogether 4 hours and 20 minutes of footage we needed to cut down for the episode. This is too too much footage, right? So I've got to cut all this down into something acceptable. So the way that we start editing down as we're going is to look at what we've got and think, does it have to be in based on a bunch of different reasons? The first one is story-wise. If we cut it out, would the story still make sense to people? Great Hoon Run's obviously a little bit different. So the story is the bosses and how we get to them. So that's absolutely fine. Another thing is little jokes that we're making. Because if we make a little joke right at the beginning that's over some crap, boring gameplay, you think, well, I'm going to cut that. But actually, if we then do a callback to that joke later on during a really crucial bit of gameplay, you've got to have the initial joke in there for it to make sense. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes, not often, but sometimes we have ended up with really crap gameplay in there for no other reason than the fact that, you know, one of us has made a callback to it during the point where we've killed the boss. It doesn't happen often, but it definitely has happened. And then finally, the other way we chop it down is basically, is it funny? And if it's not funny, it goes. So that means basically when you get the edited thing from us, it's everything should be funny, hopefully. Like, this is the thing, like, lots of people have asked us for uncut versions of what we do. And I just don't think that we'll ever really do that. Not with a full episode anyway, because we want to know that pretty much everything in that episode is going to be good. We're not, you know, sticking up a 5-hour Let's Play and hoping there's 1 or 2 funny moments in it, which is what some people do. Absolutely good luck to them. I really feel like we're making something different, or I'd like to think that we are anyway. And, you know, good luck to those people. I'm not saying that our stuff is better, but is definitely better. So what I'll do now is just edit this down as much as I can. So what I've ended up with is one massively trimmed down version of that capture. It started out today at 1 hour 20. I've managed to get it down to 28 minutes. So it's quite tight, and I was quite brutal with it because I know how much footage I've still got to do. But also, once you take into consideration all the faffing of getting Daniel in and that, it's actually not that bad. But I'm pretty happy with that. It's a good place to start. That's 1 capture down and 2 more absolute beasts to get through. Okay, day 2, just having a little cup of tea now before I start. Yesterday was pretty good. It went really, really quickly, which means today probably is not going to, because it's all the bosses today. Like obviously, like every retry is usually just like 1 boss. So there's like a rhythm to it, and it's sort of like trial and error, and it's us like learning bits and bobs. The Great Hoon Run, obviously Daniel's massively OP character changes things a little bit, so you don't know what we're gonna get stuck on and what we're gonna find really, really easy, which is lovely. Don't get me wrong, but it changes the way you have to look at the edit, because usually you go, well, I've got all these tries to go and that's going to make up the most of the edit. But then when you don't have that, it's all a new thing. Hopefully it works out. So I'd sort of been second guessing myself on whether or not it's worth having the extra hassle of Daniel's gameplay, but it's actually really awesome. It really adds something, especially in boss fights. But it's also really strange to see Finchy from a different angle as well, because obviously usually it's quite fixed, but it's really odd to see him in the background just going bonkers. And then I've just got to the bit with Tilio69, which is basically when we get invaded by someone and then we set a little trap and absolutely murder him. Like, having this bit, what I've managed to do is edit it so it's like feels really dramatic, like jumping between the things. I reckon I could have edited this just for all day, just this tiny little bit. It's such a good laugh, man. But I'm doing pretty well. I've got through quite a lot of bosses, got through Rom, got through the one Reborn. I've been editing Mikolash for longer than I would have liked, and it doesn't even finish in this capture session. I've got another massive capture session of Mikolash to get through, but it's annoying and it's a pain in the ass because obviously every time we die, we then have to summon Daniel back in. We kept running into these weird little glitches where sometimes the bell system didn't work properly. But I'm at the end of day 2 of editing now, and I've managed to cut this capture from 1 hour 20 down to 41 minutes. So we're looking pretty good. We're looking at about an hour 10 running time, but we still have a capture session of 1 hour 40 to go. Time for a beer, I reckon.
We're super lucky that we've got this bottle shop / bar called All Good Beer really close to us. It's basically opposite the studio. I mean, it's amazing, but it's also incredibly dangerous because once they know what you like, they'll start getting stuff in for you. And you'll suddenly just get a little text that says, hey, you know that wine you like? Well, we've got 2 bottles there for you right now. So as I said, lovely little treat, but also terrifying because we're there all the time now.
So I'm about to start day 3 of the edit. I've got about 1 hour and 40 of footage left, but it shouldn't be too bad because it's basically all Micolash. And once you take out all the faffing of the summoning and die-in and things like that, it's pretty straightforward to get through. So as long as there's no problems, we are absolutely laughing.
But we're not laughing. For some reason, on this capture session, in this project, every time I play back, it'll let me do it for a bit and then crash. I have no idea why. I've tried loads of stuff. So now, what was a straightforward edit has actually turned into a f***ing nightmare and just me trying to fix something. I kind of wish I'd not had all those beers last night. Okay, I've managed to fix it by making a completely new project and syncing all the footage again, and it seems to be working now. So all I have to do is crack on with this last capture session, and hopefully that'll just then import into the old project and everything will be fine. And there we go. So I've managed to chop that 1 hour 40 beast down to 35 minutes, which sounds like a lot, but actually by the time you chop out all the deaths and all the summoning faff, there wasn't lots left really. So it was actually a lot easier than I thought. And now that all the individual capture edits are done, I've got to assemble it into one mega sequence and have a look at it. So we've come in at 1 hour 47 minutes before the credits. So we had 4 hours and 20 minutes of footage. I managed to chop that down to 1 hour and 47. But honestly, anyone out there who thinks they're missing jokes or anything like that from all that stuff that I've cut, all the good stuff is in the episode. Please take our word for it. And now what I've got to do is like all the final touches, which feel like they shouldn't take too long, but actually can be quite fiddly. And this is where things could go potentially wrong as well if you're not paying attention or if you're hungover. So the first thing we need to do is put the overlay on the Let's Play shot. And we've not had an overlay before for Retry before this series, but we've used one in the past on 3-ways and on the streams, and it just looks a bit nicer, I think. But hopefully people will appreciate the fact that Daniel has designed it so the colors are actually taken from the game, so it should really feel like we're more part of that Let's Play shot rather than just being sort of stuck on top, you know? So that's all in now and looking good. The next thing to do is record the VO for it. Now, what we usually do is we pick a few key moments and write something fun for me to record. This is Retry, a Let's Play series about 3 idiot friends slowly losing their minds. On this week's episode, Posh Finchy returns to Yarnum as we undo the mistakes of our past in the Great Hoon Run. That audio can then go into the intro and outro alongside our titles and our sting. I love how these things are getting more and more elaborate, and people really love that every series has its own sort of little bespoke thing. We love working on these, and I think just sort of little touches like that, I think, is what hopefully sets us apart from quite a lot of channels. And the final step then is to add the deaths and dones. So the Great Hoon Run had its own deaths and done graphic that Daniel created, so I've got to put those in, make sure we count them a couple of times to make sure that they're all ready to go, and that's fine. And now with that all done, I can sit back, press export, and hope nothing bad happens.
One more. Has to be the jump.
Yes! And that's it. That's how I edited the Great Hoon Run. I hope that was interesting for you. It was definitely interesting to make. It's been a heavy few days, but hopefully this gives you a tiny little peek behind the curtain into what goes into an edit and how the Great Hoon Run came together. I mean, this has been essentially one long video of me trying to reclaim the phrase gav edit. So hopefully it worked.